The world watched when Princess Margaret, the Queen's rebellious younger sister, married a commoner. It was a televised fairy tale, a global event that promised to modernize the monarchy and cemented the couple as its glamorous new face. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a symbol of a new era. For the first time in the modern age, a king's daughter was marrying an ordinary citizen, and the wedding was broadcast to an estimated 300 million people. But behind the palace doors, this celebrated love story was a ticking time bomb. It was a volatile mix of passion, cruelty, and betrayal that would explode into one of the biggest royal scandals of the 20th century. This is the story of how the fairy tale of Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon devolved into a public spectacle of infidelity and heartbreak that would change the monarchy forever. To really get this story, you have to understand the woman at its center. Princess Margaret was the beautiful, vivacious younger sister of Queen Elizabeth II, and she'd spent her youth in a gilded cage. She was known for her sharp wit, her love of the arts, and a rebellious streak that constantly clashed with the rigid rules of royal life. Just a few years earlier, she'd been forced to make an impossible choice. In 1955, she publicly ended her relationship with the divorced war hero group Captain Peter Townsend. The Queen, as head of the Church of England, couldn't formally approve a marriage to a divorced man. Caught between love and duty, Margaret chose duty. The heartbreak was immense, and it left a scar that would shape the rest of her life. Then, in 1958, at a dinner party, she met Anthony Armstrong. He was everything the palace wasn't. A charismatic, bohemian photographer who moved in a world of artists and intellectuals. He wasn't titled. He wasn't landed gentry. He was a commoner, though one with an upper-class background and undeniable magnetism. Their courtship was a whirlwind of secret meetings at his studio, a world away from the prying eyes of the court. He saw her not just as a princess, but as a woman, capturing her in portraits that hinted at the passion beneath her royal exterior. In February 1960, the world was stunned when they announced their engagement. It was a shock because the romance had been so perfectly hidden, but it was also a thrill. Here was a real love match. A princess choosing a man for himself, not his title. The wedding on May 6, 1960, was a national celebration, held at Westminster Abbey. It was the first royal wedding ever to be televised. The streets of London were packed with 1 million cheering well-wishers, all eager to see the couple who represented a more modern, accessible monarchy. Dressed in a Norman Hartnell gown, Margaret was the picture of a radiant bride. It seemed like the perfect start to a royal, happily ever after. But perfection, as they would soon find out, was only an illusion. The 6-week honeymoon aboard the royal yacht Britannia was a sun-drenched Caribbean escape. But while Margaret and Tony, now the Earl of Snowdon, smiled for the cameras, a secret was already ticking away back in England. Just 3 weeks after their celebrated wedding, on May 28, 1960, one of Snowdon's former lovers, Camilla Fry, gave birth to a daughter. The child, Polly, was raised as the daughter of Camilla's husband, one of Snowdon's closest friends. It would take more than 4 decades and a DNA test to confirm the truth. Lord Snowdon had a secret child, born just as his royal marriage began. This early deception was a dark omen for the marriage, a sign of the deep fissures already forming. The reality of their union set in quickly. Lord Snowdon, the self-proclaimed rebel, found the rigid structure of royal life suffocating. He was a working artist who valued his independence and bristled at the endless protocol, especially the expectation that he walk a few paces behind his royal wife. He continued his work as a photographer for the Sunday Times, often disappearing for long stretches and leaving Margaret to feel abandoned in Kensington Palace. Princess Margaret, in turn, had been raised to be the center of attention. She was used to deference and saw her husband's independence as a personal rejection. She became increasingly possessive, demanding to know his whereabouts and growing resentful of his separate life. The very qualities that had drawn them together, her royal glamour and his bohemian spirit, were now tearing them apart. The modern fairy tale was starting to sour, and the public had no idea about the private war that was brewing. As the years went on, the private war between Margaret and Snowdon escalated into a toxic cycle of cruelty and mutual infidelity. Their life at Kensington Palace became a battleground. Lord Snowdon's affairs were numerous and brazen. His infidelity was a constant, with rumored relationships with actress Jacqueline Chan and model Gina Ward. In 1969, his affair with Lady Jacqueline Rufus Isaacs became a painful reality for Margaret when she found the woman at her husband's hospital bedside, humiliated. The princess reportedly told a friend, "I could nurse him. You know, when I was a girl guide, I got a badge for nursing." Feeling lonely and profoundly unhappy, Margaret began to seek solace elsewhere. She embarked on her own affairs, first with her daughter's godfather, Anthony Barton, and later a well-publicized dalliance with society pianist Robin Douglas. The marriage devolved into a competitive game of retaliation, a series of affairs that only deepened their resentment for one another. But the deepest wounds weren't always from infidelity. Lord Snowdon's cruelty became legendary in their inner circle. He seemed to take a sadistic pleasure in emotionally tormenting his wife. His preferred method was leaving Vial, cutting notes for her to find. According to her lady-in-waiting, Lady Glenconner, Margaret became afraid to even open her own drawers. Tucked inside a book or a glove drawer, she would find hateful messages. One note simply said, "I hate you." Another read, "You look like a Jewish manicurist, and I hate you." Perhaps the most infamous was a list he compiled, titled 24 Reasons Why I Hate You. A bewildered Margaret later confessed to a friend, "I can't think of 24 reasons to hate anybody." This psychological warfare transformed their home from a palace into a prison of misery. By the early 1970s, the marriage was one in name only. Margaret and Snowdon were living largely separate lives, their shared existence a cold truce punctuated by bitter arguments. The final act of their marital drama would be ignited by a new man in Margaret's life. In 1973, she was introduced to Roddy Llewellyn, a landscape gardener, 17 years her junior. In Roddy, the lonely princess found a source of affection and joy that had long been absent from her life. Their relationship found a sanctuary on the Caribbean island of Mustique, where Margaret owned a private villa. It was there, away from the judgment of the British press and the coldness of her husband, that she could finally relax. But in February 1976, their private paradise was shattered. A photographer captured images of Margaret and Roddy swimming together. The blurry, long-lens photos were tame by today's standards, but in 1970s Britain they were a bombshell, published on the front page of the ** News of the World *. The pictures created a monumental scandal. The press portrayed Margaret not as a woman finding happiness, but as a predatory older woman, a flusy preying on a Members of Parliament publicly denounced her as a royal parasite, an embarrassment to the Queen. The scandal gave Lord Snowdon the public justification he needed to end the marriage, while he himself was in a long-term affair with a production assistant named Lucy Litt. The photos of his wife and her lover provided the perfect cover. Lord Snowdon publicly announced their separation. Upon hearing the news, Princess Margaret's reported response was one of sheer relief. "I think that's the best news you've ever given me." The affair with Roddy Llewellyn hadn't destroyed the marriage, had been broken for years, but it had exposed the rot to the world. On March 19, 1976, Kensington Palace issued a statement announcing the separation. After 18 years of a tumultuous union, the couple officially divorced in July 1978. The divorce was a seismic event. While not the first royal to divorce in the 20th century, Princess Victoria, Melita of Edinburgh, had divorced in 1901, Margaret was the most senior royal to do so in the full glare of the modern media. It was a stark break from tradition and thrust the royal family into a new era of public marital breakdown. The Queen was said to be deeply saddened by the failure of her sister's marriage and concerned about the damage to the monarchy's reputation. The scandal challenged the carefully curated image of the royals as a bastion of stability. For decades, they had been held to a higher standard. Now, Margaret's very public divorce humanized the family in a way that was both shocking and, for some, relatable. Lord Snowdon, for his part, wasted no time. Just months after the divorce was finalized, in December 1978, he married his long-term mistress, Lucy Lindsay. His pattern of infidelity continued, however, and his second marriage also ended in divorce in 2000. after it was revealed he had fathered another child out of wedlock. Princess Margaret never remarried. Her 8-year relationship with Roddy Llewellyn eventually fizzled out, though they remained lifelong friends. Despite the public scorn she endured, Queen Elizabeth later reportedly acknowledged the happiness Roddy had brought her sister. She is said to have told a friend, "I'd just like to say, it was rather difficult at moments, but I thank you so much for introducing Princess Margaret to Roddy, 'cause he made her really happy." The divorce marked a quieter chapter for Margaret, but the scars of her marriage would remain. The marriage of Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon was more than just a failed love story. It was a cultural flashpoint that left a permanent mark on the monarchy. Their relationship, from its televised beginning to its tabloid-fueled end, mirrored the immense social changes of the 1960s and 70s. They were the first royal couple to live their private lives under the intense, unforgiving glare of modern media, and the public's fascination with their glamour and their scandals set a new precedent for celebrity-style royal coverage. Their very public divorce shattered the illusion of it forced an institution built on tradition to confront the messy realities of modern life. While scandalous at the time, Margaret's divorce arguably paved the way for a more tolerant approach to marital breakdowns within the family. When 3 of the Queen's own children, Charles, Anne, and Andrew, divorced in the 1990s, it was still a crisis, but it was no longer an unprecedented one. Margaret had unwillingly broken that barrier. She endured the public condemnation so that future generations of royals could live with a degree of personal freedom she was never afforded. Their story remains a compelling, cautionary tale about the collision of public duty and private desire. It revealed the human cost of living within the rigid framework of the crown, and in doing so, it inadvertently made the monarchy more human. The gilded cage had been broken, and through the cracks, the world saw not just a princess and a photographer, but a man and a woman locked in a tragic, passionate, and destructive love story. The marriage of Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon remains one of the most compelling chapters in modern royal history. A powerful reminder that behind the pomp and pageantry, royal lives are often just as complex and filled with heartbreak as any other. If you found this story of love, rebellion, and scandal fascinating, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the history of the world's most famous families. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you see Princess Margaret as a tragic figure trapped by circumstance, or as a royal rebel who lived life on her own terms? Thank you for watching.